you. Good afternoon, all, and welcome to our session on the language of luxury, where we'll be discussing the evolution of luxury communications, why it's happened, why it matters to the high-end client of today, and why it's relevant to you, particularly as we navigate this new normal together. Please ask loads of questions in the chat, and we'll try and get through as many of them as possible at the end of the session. My name is Jenny Holman. I am PR Communications Director of Mason Rose. We're a communication and sales representation agency for luxury hotels throughout the world. And joining me on this panel are four brilliant and deeply experienced participants, including my colleague in the blue, Kim Jenkins, who's Mason Rose's Director of Sales and a MICE specialist. Lisa Lerno-Dock, Sales Director of MICE of the celebrated British Hotel Collection, Iconic Luxury Hotels. Henriette Speed, Director of Just the Letter B, which represents a collection of DMCs in India, Africa, Italy, and Turkey, specifically targeting the UK events industry and the go-to for professionals seeking advice in these regions. And Adam, with the pink headphones on, is the co-head of business and strategy at the creative agency Studio Black Tomato. They've produced exceptional award-winning content for a plethora of luxury, lifestyle, and travel brands. Welcome. It was, in fact, Adam and his team's deep dive report into the language of luxury and what it means today that provides the inspiration for the subject of today's talk. So, with no further ado, I'd like to kickstart the session with a question to you, Adam. One of the many interesting points that was unearthed in your study, Adam, was how luxury language has noticeably moved towards a kinder, more authentic, idiosyncratic voice. We'd love to get your thoughts on why you think this is. Do you think perhaps it's due to the changing expectations of your typical high-end client, and how important is it for our audience to consider this? In fact, that's three questions wrapped up into one mega question. So over to you, Adam.
No, that's absolutely fine. I think one of the things that we noticed and why we were quite interested in this as a subject matter is language has to change. It's always changing. If you think even this year, all of the phrases that in December we're already sort of sick of hearing this year, everything from sort of you're on mute to super spreader to all of those other sort of things. It's funny how quickly the words that are new and exciting and we sort of slip into our conversation, we get tired of, and they just make you feel old-fashioned, and they say something about you. When someone says pivot, you get a sense of that someone who's very corporate in the way that they're talking, and perhaps they've spent too long on Zoom. But some people have a nice way of talking, an eloquent way of talking, and that's what we're looking at really, is if language is how we present ourselves to the outside world, what does the luxury industry want to present itself as? So if the language is evolving to be kinder, more authentic, that's because those are the values that the whole industry wants to reflect more. And this shouldn't be any surprise to anyone on the call. The industry as a whole wants to be more sustainable, it wants to be kinder, and it wants to be authentic. So you need to reflect that in your language. So if you, in the words that you choose, both written and also, through staff and events and real people, even on the telephone, if those words are boastful or arrogant, or you're just trying to shout over people, then you're reflecting that personality back against yourself. So that's how we've seen the language change, and we think it's because, firstly, that change in the industry to want to reflect those values, but also, and I think this is the really interesting thing, us learning more about the luxury consumer, because I think that where language used to be was an assumption that the luxury consumer was one particular demographic or type of person. I mean, we say an ultra high net worth individual is both the Queen and Kanye West, two very different personalities that share nothing in the way that they talk. And yet we're supposed to communicate with both of these people the same, and that's not true. So this change in the sort of idiosyncrasies of luxury language is because, by being able to follow these sorts of people and their social media and just see how they engage in social media, we know how these people talk, and we wouldn't have that, say, 50 years ago. Does that answer your questions, Jenny?
I
Three of
think
them.
it does. So, are you fundamentally saying not necessarily that the luxury client has changed, it's that we know more about who they are, thanks to social media and what have you?
Yeah, and I think that also means that, and this is one of the key things we keep coming back to. Again, it's not necessarily rocket science, but it's often skipped over. Is that now we have the opportunity to have a dialogue with consumers rather than talk at them. And luxury language has always been talking at you and above you. There's this feeling that, and if you go back and look at sort of classic advertising, you see sort of luxury brands have always had to feel that they are so they have to reference high culture. They have to make jokes that only certain people would understand, or they would have to talk in a way where grammar is absolutely perfect. And, it's this hyperbolic, flowery, Thomas Hardy sort of language. Whereas now, and if you just imagine if that was a real person, if someone came and spoke to you like that as a real person at a party, you would think, who are you trying to impress? What are you about? And those sort of values that we think in the way that people talk aren't important anymore. We now would rather hear from someone who can talk to you in a very sort of direct way. Someone who is smart isn't necessarily the most verbose person. There's the person who can put it in very simple, clear terms, I think.
Okay, it's really interesting. Now, Lisa, I hope you don't mind me saying so, but you've been in this industry a while. How have you seen the MICE clients' sort of perception of luxury perhaps changed since you started working in the industry? And have you had to adapt how you communicate with them, or has it been predominantly about service, or a mix of the two is so innately integrated? We'd love your take on that.
Well, I think absolutely it's a mix of the two, and I agree wholeheartedly with everything that Adam said. I mean, things have changed so much. I started with Chute and Glen in 2002, a long time ago, as you say, and it was a completely different hotel. Most all five-star hotels there were. I mean, it was much more about, it was more of a one size fits all. It was expensive. It was posh. It was, you walk in and people would kind of a little bit like, who are your people? Where are you from? And it was a bit pretentious, but that's what, people were buying. That was their vision of, or at least the idea of the vision of the time. I think I started right when that was starting to move and starting to change into a much more personal experience. One thing I do remember when I first started Chute and Glen, I guess originally, gentlemen were required to wear a jacket and tie in the dining room. And right about the time I started, they took away the requirement for a tie. And I was in our general manager's office one day, and he got two letters on his desk exactly at the same time. The first person said, look, I had a great stay, loved your hotel, but I worked in the city. This requirement that gentlemen still have to wear a jacket in the evening, it's antiquated, it's old. My idea of relaxing is just being able to take off my jacket. That's why I'm coming to you, so get rid of it. The next letter said, Chute and Glen, I had a lovely stay, but you're really letting your standards drop by not requiring gentlemen to wear a tie in the evening. And it kind of went on for that. And I think that with individuals and with groups now, everyone's view of luxury is so different. I mean, that's why the family market is so big now. And that's even creeping into, I think, the group in my side. I mean, they're even looking at now incentives where family is allowed to come along, because that's a luxury to people when they're working so hard. They want to bring their family, they want to bring the kids, they want to bring the dog. So as you said, Adam, it's much more of an authentic message, a more personal message. And I think, well, we like to say with all our hotels we're posh but not stuffy, and I think that's much more the dynamic in the way people think now. I mean, luxury is not having to wear the tie, not having to wear the jacket, just being able to relax, to be in a comfortable environment. Um, so I think it's changed both on the individual side and the group side in that way.
Thank you, Lisa. And Henry, I'm going to come to you. Obviously, you're such a valuable destination resource for many of the UK events professionals for the regions that you represent. And have you noticed a change? Lisa was talking about incentives where they can bring families and things like that, and extended stays. What and possibly what's been the most obvious point of difference to date, do you think? Be great to hear your thoughts.
Well, like Lisa, I've been in the industry a long time, and I think obviously there's been a lot of change through that timeline, but it went very obviously from being money can't buy, champagne flowing, the best hotels, many of them being destination hotels in their own right, to it being more about money can't buy, that word that we probably fling about far too much in our industry, but it's become much more about emotional connections and experiences. And I think that's definitely the way it's going to continue to go. I think people are looking for that emotional connection when they travel now more than ever. And I think this whole pandemic has heightened that. It was already coming in, it was already starting, but I think now it's just going to keep moving at a much faster pace. I think people want to be involved with the communities that they're visiting. Sadly, I feel we're possibly going to be traveling less in the next year or so. So it has to be meaningful. And I think that has become a real luxury, to have those meaningful experiences. And that's certainly what we're getting asked for in the few briefs starting to come in for 2021 and beyond. People really want those emotional connections and those experiences that are, I think, authentic. I think that's the key word, that people want authenticity. And therefore, how we speak to them about the experiences, how we try and market ourselves, has to have an authentic voice as well. And I think it's more about a dialogue nowadays. I think that's definitely changed, as both Lisa and Adam touched on. It's a constant dialogue with our consumers, with our partners, and that's definitely been a big differentiation point between what's happening now and what just existed even 5 years ago.
Interesting. So it's quite like a circular effect. People are groups are asking for more incentives that appeal to the emotional side, that are experiences that touch you. And in order to convey that, it's important that not only does the service offer that, but also that the when you're trying to sell it, it's marketed that way. Kim, I like Henriette. You've worked in-house and now agency side. Have you had to advise the clients, the hotels you represent, to adapt accordingly, or have you found even yourself changing your approach too?
Yeah, hi. I think we've always in the past, being in-house, we've always spoken about personalization and making an experience personal, and having what can we do to make it really special and personal. But actually, there has never been more of a time to do that than now. And I think now people have really taken the time in the last few months to find out what that really means. Because, like Adam was saying, from, one person to the next, you can't really, personalize everything according to your brand. Like, we do this and therefore this is our personal message. It's a case of personalization to your own brand and to the person that you're speaking to. If you're in one destination, if you're going local, if you're going to be in, a staycation, if you're going to stay in the UK and do something here, what is the incentive? Like Henriette was saying, what is the experience locally? What is the experience if you're going to be traveling? What does that mean in terms of luxury? And I guess we've been really lucky in speaking to our hotels who actually know what that is. They do have that feeling. They do know the personal touch. We've obviously had to ask the questions, but the answers were, completely obvious. They know how to give that extra feeling of, language of luxury. I think personally, in terms of anything that I've had to change when it all happened, it was, I guess it was so instinctive just to ring my friends in the industry and find out how they were. But in hindsight, that's was actually a really warm thing to do. I never considered ringing to sell something during a catastrophe, during a pandemic. And actually, I didn't realize the change until I realized that I was changing, if that makes sense. You ring your friends in the industry, oh, gosh, how are you? I'm not telling you about our new destinations. Of course, if you need something, I can help you. But it's more a case of just speaking to your friends, your clients in the industry, the people that you work with. We're quite a close niche of network of people. So I guess that's been a change I didn't realize had happened, but has happened. And I think it should continue to be like that. We recommend things based on experience and what we know. And once we understand what a client wants, then of course we can go into seeing how we can help them. But that's certainly been a personal change for me.
It's interesting, Kim, because it also plays into that dialogue and that two-way piece, asking people, how are you? What do you need? Yeah. Etc. And that's the bottom line of good service. And actually, it's interesting now that brands or luxury brands, with what Adam was saying, are paying heed to that. Actually, I'm going to stay with you quickly, Kim. And actually, you might have already answered this. Do you feel, and this is to everyone actually, the advent of COVID has expedited the trend at all? And is it something that you're going to expect to see continuing? I think you've even said that already, Henriette. Kim, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I do think it does need to continue. That service. I think Henriette was saying, travel might be less in the years to come, and it might be a luxury in itself. Just being able to travel with your company again, or if a company was going to maybe reward the top 100, they might reward the top 50 people in terms of incentivizing them, and that might be the luxury in itself. So I definitely think, because things will be more thoughtful, that will continue, that personalization and how do I make this group feel really special, whether it's a group for a 50th birthday, because that's a totally different personalization to a group of CEOs or sales people celebrating their successes. So I think that should continue. Yeah.
Thank you. So what's your take on this? Because obviously, if we're talking about personalization and what have you, and we're hoping at some stage we'll have bigger events in whatever form they take. How do we look at an even more personalized, nuanced approach service to satisfy this demand?
Well, that was, our reaction initially. I think the trend was, as everyone has said before me, the trend was going much more away from the fact. When I first got into the industry, the idea of an incentive was really just basically a very high-end 5-star replacement holiday. And that's, what it was. Take the group and do all the experiences that you would have if you went to some great 5-star hotel and you did the water skiing and the this and, But that has evolved, and it's been in different surveys through site, and people are looking for much more authentic experiences, like we were saying. And it was going in that direction to begin with. But then with the onset of COVID, Kim, as you were saying, I didn't, I remember I had to go to one of these forums and I had to present. And I thought, what the heck am I going to be presenting? It would be totally inappropriate to break out the PowerPoint saying, here's our conference room, here's our dining room. What can we sell right now? And kind of having empathy with the audience, and incentive will come back, but even more so right now, it's reward. Because I think there are so many companies out there that still have, as we know, a lot of money, but they have this workforce working from home that they just want to bring together, and they still want that engagement. So how do you get the engagement and still be able to offer, a group engagement and offer an individual experience? So what we've been trying to promote is we're kind of saying sort of a group, a shared experience that can be delivered individually. And it's not vouchers. The idea is it's not, because I think companies still want that shared group experience, but how do you deliver that in a safe environment when people are afraid? Even if tomorrow people were allowed to travel, say you've got the 5-star route, you were offered a trip to, I don't know, Mauritius first class, whatever. Out of the group of, say, 50 couples, that probably 10, 20, 30% might not want to even travel now because they were just too nervous at this juncture. So, but if you could give that to them as an individual experience. So our idea is that you kind of have, you launch it as a group, but then each individual can take their portion of it at a different time, stay at a different time with an experience customized to them individually or to the group's overall overriding, focus. Like if a company was overriding focus was on wellness, each person could have a true incentive quality experience. And that would be a true luxury for them. And that way, but the company could keep engaging with them. You wouldn't just send them off and say, see ya, let them go whenever they wanted. The company would then manage the registration. They know when they were there. They would ask them to engage with the other people in the group at different times. So I think a version of that going forward, maybe right now it would have to be based on the individuals going at different times and then engaging with some kind of platform back of house. But going forward, I think the groups then will start to be smaller versions of that, little pods of that, each wanting some. And Henriette, like you said, sometimes maybe the luxury now, where the luxury would have been the 5-course champagne lunch on the beach 5-10 years ago. Well, the luxury now for a company might be to be involved with some kind of social experience, working closely with the community. And that would be something people would really remember, and it would be authentic and they would respond to. That's the luxury. I mean, that's the thing I think people have to really think about, have a bit more empathy when it comes to this, idea of luxury. Now, I mean, if you're out walking and you're in the middle of the Pennines and you're freezing cold and you're wet and you see this great little pub and you walk in with the fireplace and you sit down in front of the fire and someone, before you even ask, hands you a cup of tea or a glass of mulled wine, that you just say to yourself, this is luxury.
Yeah, it is.
Good point. Adam, how do we, and if you like, sell this idea, using language, using this idea that if you were to book with X hotel or what have you, a group or or if you were to deal with a representation agency for a DMC or whatever it is, how do we sell this, these ideas, this personalization with using language?
Yeah, good question. I think one of the things that we've looked at with how sort of language has been changing over the last year was really helpful for us to look back at how language changed for financial services brands. It sounds very dull, but it's super relevant. How language changed for financial services brands after the 2009 crash, because there's the same problem. How do we start to sell again? How do we start to inspire people again when we feel like no one wants to hear from us, and everything is difficult? And what we've seen as a whole language this year is brands start to talk in a way that feels like legal wording, that everything feels like it's being safe and cautious, and it stops being, I think this is a good idea and we would like to present these options, we think this. And even though we all know that it's right to be more human and be more authentic, as soon as people start to talk about something that's sensitive, they stop using that language. And I think that one of the sort of main drivers of that, and we've noticed where language gets really good and believable, is when people have lived those experiences themselves. So if we're starting to talk about this group travel or incentive or whatever we're selling in our industry, we need to make sure that we are now experiencing it in the way that it is going to be in 2021. Because if you can personally say to someone what it is going to be like to go to such and such hotel now, as it is now, then that's going to feel so much more reassuring. In the same way that if you were going to tell a friend and recommend them, this experience, you would need to say, oh, I've tried it and I think it's great, or I tried it. You know what a really authentic sort of recommendation is. I tried that, and I tell you what's really good is the dessert. You need to have that, and you need to make sure you get there half hour early to get the good seats. That's authentic language, and people can see through that, and it doesn't matter what audience they are, B2B, B2C, luxury or not. Those will make the difference. So I think, like, to make the language better, I would think that our industry needs to spend time getting out there and re-experiencing how things are lived now, which isn't easy, I know, but I think that would be my recommendation, I think.
So
and if anyone's offering, I'm happy to go visit anyway.
So hurrah for the return of fam trips in 2021. Hopefully with our vaccine news and everything else coming out, or depending on where you're tuning in from. I'm conscious that we don't have that much time left, believe it or not. I'm just checking if there's been any questions that haven't been so far. So I'm going to ask my final question. I'm going to ask Henriette first. So what is the one or more takeaway you can give to the audience today to ensure they're leveraging what luxury means today, or appeals to this new type of, if you like, luxury client who's seeking those more authentic experiences? How can you communicate with them? Just any key takeaways that you think would really inspire those who have tuned in today.
Yeah, I think it's, like I said before, I think it's just really about an emotional connection at every single level. So it's, listening to what our customers really, really want at the moment, what they need, and trying to, I think, strike that balance. Again, it's getting the language right. It's showing them that we are, COVID safe, and we're ready to greet customers again in our destinations, in our hotels, but almost trying to get that balance so that you're not just talking about face masks and social distancing. And I think you still want to inspire people, and we need to tell a story. We mustn't forget that it's still about storytelling, an authentic story, but it's making sure that, I guess, we strike that balance, that it's safe to travel, it's safe to go on these incentives, especially, if you have, say, a resort with lots of space, or destinations where there are kind of hotels out in the middle of nowhere that you can take over exclusively, all these great things that appeal to the consumer right now. But, try and show them, like Adam said, that you can still have a great experience, and try to get that balance between inspiring them and showing them that it's safe to do so. Because I think it can feel a bit clinical if all you focus on is what we're doing for COVID, what measures we've put in place. It starts to feel a bit, well, I don't really want to go somewhere that, I'm going to have my temperature checked every half an hour, and I'm going to have to wear a mask, and it doesn't seem like an incentive. So I think just getting that balance right. We still need to inspire. Incentives will happen again. So let's start talking in that way, in that way that we believe, we are going to be traveling and having these experiences again.
Thank you. That's really, really beautifully put. Kim, I'm going to come on to you next with that same question in mind.
Yeah. It's something that I read the first time I read Studio Black Tomato's Language of Luxury. In there it states, you cannot have luxury without kindness. And it kind of stuck with me when I first read it. And then I watched, while I was thinking about today's talk, I watched the Waitrose John Lewis ad with all the love and the kindness and all that. And I thought, you know what? It's absolutely right. So I guess my short take is that, again, it reminded me so much of that, is that you cannot have luxury without kindness. You need to be thoughtful of the person that you're dealing with, or the group that you're dealing with. So that's my takeaway.
Thank you. Lisa, can I come on to you next with that same question? A takeaway, please, for the audience today.
Well, I agree with everything everybody said, and I think exactly like what you just said, Kim, that if nothing else has come of this, if anything good has come of this, it's that we are kinder with each other, which leads me, I mean, the two words that I would think, one would be honesty. I think with hotels in particular, like we were saying, with authenticity and having a truly kind of honest message, knowing who you are and what you are, and building around that, and also empathy. I think empathy would be the most important word of really, really listening to your clients, trying to figure out what they're really trying to get out of it, and just being kinder, like you said, and not just thinking about your own position, but thinking more about theirs.
Thank you. And Adam, and this started and
Hello.
ended with you.
Um, yeah, just a closing thought, and I think that it feels weird to follow those really sort of like nice, heartwarming messages about kindness with just a sort of more practical business point. Is that we came up with this report because we love this industry and we want next year this to be a great year where everyone really bounces back and comes strong. And I think to do that, let's not beat around the bush. We all really need to sell next year, and I think that we know as a creative agency that it's the year you need to sell more than ever, but you have no budgets to do so. And that's why we looked at language, because language doesn't cost. It costs a lot to get a new video, to get a new website, but be brave, have a lot of fun with your language, because a really amazing tweet could make a difference and it doesn't cost you. So more than anything, just look at your language and don't be scared, and you can really stand out with some great words. That's the thought.
Thanks, Adam. And do you have one last sort of little comment about getting that balance right between the sort of the health and safety aspect and the having fun and inspiration? Is there sort of one thing you should really just everyone should
If
embrace?
if you're sending something out and you don't find it inspiring yourself, then anyone is not going to find it inspiring either. So if you find yourself very bored writing it, the chances are someone's going to find it very boring to read. That's a good, yeah.
That's a
Have fun.
great benchmark. Thank you, Adam, for giving us an overview of your brilliant study. And thank you for your incredibly valuable contributions, Lisa, Henriette, and Kim, and all of you for tuning in. I don't think we have any questions, which is fine. And I'm sorry if I have missed any, but feel free to ask the team afterwards. You all have a 10-minute coffee or juice or snack break. And then please come back to the stage for the final session where some early results of the site index will be shared. Thank you all and good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are.